Elke Rubach here, Rubach Wealth, with another segment of Community Spotlight. And today we're really excited to have a very special guest, Wendy Kauffman, who is an extraordinary friend and also a 20-year veteran in the communications field who heads PR at Brown & Cohen, Communications and Public Affairs. She's the vice president for reputation management, and she's the founder of the firm's FemWorks group practice.
That's right.
Her work extends to private, public, and non-for-profit sectors across the country, and she has supported innovative startups and going all the way to global brands. What unites her work of these organizations is their need to successfully establish themselves as thought leaders, strong storytellers, whether it's to increase sales, raise funds, engagement, or impact policy. So Wendy, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're trying to bring to our audience different topics, and yours is one that particularly interests me because it's such an unknown and misunderstood, and yet people think that because we can read or speak, we can communicate. And no, there's a massive science and dark and obscure science behind it that only you guys understand, because when things go wrong, that's when people call you like, oh, I think I made a mistake. So Wendy, tell me, what has been the role of professionals during the pandemic?
So it's interesting. I think for me, or at least I've already experienced 3 different roles, and I actually see a 4th coming. So at first, we were really all hands on tech. Everybody trying to pivot, a word, if I never hear this word again in my life, pivot, I will be very happy but really that's what we were trying to do. Make sure that businesses stayed open, make sure that we didn't lose any client share, customer share for clients, making sure that we were getting out word that we're still operating, we're just operating differently. So that's kind of what the first wave was. And then kind of things settled, everybody got used to their new normal at least. And then we started really worrying about our not-for-profit clients, because as belts started tightening for the corporate sector, all of a sudden those donations that a lot of these organizations were counting on was something that became more and more concerning. And at the same time, a lot of the issues that they had been dealing with, these cracks in society, whether it was affordable housing or food security or the various different gendered impacts of COVID, these were all, they were all cracks in society that were now like busting open because COVID was compounding everything. If you just look at women have been set back about 30 years. Since COVID started in terms of the progress that they made, according to a lot of research. So there's a lot of issues that needed awareness and to stay in the forefront, and we focused a lot on that. Then came what I call the 3rd kind of section, which was, I think, all the business development we had done at the beginning, not knowing when it was going to come in, and it was focusing on all the planning, all the crisis communication planning around COVID. So back to school protocols. There's an article I wrote, it's actually on LinkedIn, about don't think your back to school protocol is the same thing as a crisis plan. So what are your crisis planning for your organization around COVID? So we started working with a lot of schools as an example on helping them. A lot of businesses started calling saying, we've had outbreaks. How do we make sure that these outbreaks in our organization doesn't impact our reputation long term? And unfortunately, also dealing with some fallout and having to shrink some establishments. So how do you shrink your footprint without signaling to people that you're in trouble? So just making sure that you're making good, sustainable decisions. So that's kind of been there. That's a big mouthful for 3 phases, on that. And I think really that 4th brand is rebuild. And that's where we're coming to. And I think if organizations don't stay top of mind, if they don't remember to do the PR now, that people will soon start to travel, they will start to go out, they will start to buy again, they will start to need more services. If you're out of sight, you're out of mind, and you can't forget that in time. So I think that's where our next shift is.
So I think it kind of goes back to something that we keep telling our clients is take a holistic approach. Look at things long term. Don't operate during good or bad times on what's the next best thing, or how can I fix this one or have a quick win here. I think that there's something to be said about people who have taken the holistic approach and collected their team, be it crisis communications, PR, investments, insurance, lawyers, accountants, everybody coming to the table and know that, yes, times are tougher, but if you have your team and you can trust them and you know that this too shall pass, if you keep working, if you persist on your vision and you have the right people around you without having to react like in a panic, when this is gone, you'll be ahead of the curve. You'll be ahead of all those who historically have been taking shortcuts. What's the cheapest? What's the fastest? And you will stand out in the crowd because you are calm, and people will navigate to people who show that they've got it, right? And I think that goes to every line of business. Would you agree?
I would agree, but it really takes that set of professionals to say when somebody's drinking out of the fire hose to say it's actually going to be okay. I think sometimes it's hard to see beyond that, and that's why you do rely on your team, and whether your team is your crisis communication specialist, if it's your lawyer, if it's your accountant, financial advisor, that those are your people that say, we've been there before, we've seen this before in this form or another. And these are the steps you have to take, for now. And they could be somewhat altered, but nonetheless, somebody who can step back and see the whole picture for you. Absolutely.
And what would you say are the most common mistakes companies make when it comes to crisis communication?
That's a very good question. I think that there's four main mistakes. I mean, there's probably more, but like four really come to mind. So first one is just not being honest. If you made a mistake, be honest. Because if you are not, or if you try to be kind of partially honest, what's going to happen is people will find out. And when people do find out, you'll have lost credibility. And you lost all control over the story. So that's the first one, is just be honest. The second one is get all the bad news out at once. It is better to have a bad day or a bad week than it is a bad month or a bad year. So just if you have bad news, say it all. Don't just give a little bit and hope that the rest doesn't to light. Rip the Band-Aid off, if you will. The third one is who you choose as a spokesperson. So you really want to choose the spokesperson who is the highest level in your company as possible. So if you are choosing your PR specialist to be your voice, then you are telling people that you're hiding something, unfortunately. That's the message that you're sending. If you're using somebody who's more junior, then you are sending the message that you don't think this is important enough for the most senior person at a company. And now there's probably many reasons that a very senior person may not want to do to handle it. It's very tough. Their attention is on other things. They might not have the personality for it. But unfortunately, if this is a serious problem, you have to have your most serious people right out in front. And I would say the fourth thing is really not forgetting your people. That's the other piece. When there's a crisis, everybody's looking outside, but and we're all seeing how do we kind of like stem this leak. But I think you have to first start inside and not forget your own people. That's the most important thing first. Do your people feel safe? Do they feel secure? Are they ready to help you? And they will help you. When they feel safe and they feel supported, they will be there to help you. They are your foot soldiers. Treat them well first and go out as a team to solve this problem together.
Well, that's I think that's golden, and I wish everybody used it, but that's what keeps you in business. So let's move a little bit away from COVID, although I see it as a bit of a side product of COVID. the country is awakening to social tension, racial disparity awareness. Women, as you said earlier, have been set back many years. How should a spokesperson address these issues? Because hiding is not the way.
Correct. You know, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this over the pandemic. There is this social awakening, long overdue. And I think the role of the corporate spokesperson just got a lot harder. I do. I think they just got a lot harder. They need to ensure that they will not become the story themselves, right? So you have to make sure that your reaction isn't, or your poor reaction doesn't become the story. And how do you do this, right? Because as spokesperson, it's just a person like anyone else, and we all see the world through our own viewpoints, right? We all see the world through our viewpoints, through our lived experience. But the problem is, that's our normal, and that's how we judge normal. But when something is different than our normal, is it unnormal, or is it worse, wrong? And what happens? So you have to, we all need to look at things and say, I'm judging this different, and maybe I can't see it because I'm not the same gender. I am somebody with food security. I am not a person of color. I am not a person with a disability. I am not, insert anything that I have not lived. And I can't assume that something is not normal. It is just not something that I have yet experienced. And I have to make sure that I have that growth mindset in my reaction, so I don't create a problem in my response. So that's very, I think, a big area there. And there's many reasons for unconscious bias, and there's many types of unconscious bias. But I think the role of a spokesperson is to start looking inward, making sure we check our own unconscious bias, and we have to also do the same for our firms. I think there's points here on this one, which is we need to focus on intent. We can no longer focus on intent. We have to focus on outcome. So at some point in this spokesperson's life, we are going to have to learn to apologize, either for our own actions or for the actions of our organization. And it can't be one of those, what I call like old-fashioned apology is, woe is me, I am so sorry, I didn't mean to do that, I didn't know better. That's about intent, but it doesn't wash anymore. We have to focus on outcome. So apologies needs to start with understanding how you made somebody else feel with your remarks, and apologize that way, ideally with a path for improvement and even check-in points to see how you're going. So that's how it needs to go. A real apology is a commitment to learning to do better. And I think and that's all anybody really can ever ask for. It's a journey. One tip I like to give is when you're writing an apology, don't use the word if or but. So that's something that that people can take away is don't use if or but, and then that will make sure that you're not making excuses for your behavior or for what you said.
I think it's so interesting because it's, and the other thing I would add, if I may, is come up with a plan to address that, and ideally co-create the solution with the people that clearly understand on the other side what was wrong, what went wrong, what went down the wrong way, because they live that reality. They are the people that you offended, intentionally, unintentionally, whatever, and help include them in helping you fix it.
Yeah. But also respect if they, and this could be kind of hard, but if they don't want to be part of the solution, because this is their lived experience every single day. Maybe they don't want to be the person who has to always fix something. So, eventually, if you can build trust, your way is absolutely the ideal way of doing it. But it may take a little bit of time for that person to warm up and trust you and want to help you. But it's funny, there's a lot of there's a lot of courses you can take on this and books that you can read, but it's diversity is what we are. It's just the facts, right? Inclusion is how we include that diversity, and that's a journey, that we take. And belonging is really where the rubber hits the road. And do we make everybody feel that they belong in our corporations, in our world, in our community? And that's what we all need to strive for, because belonging doesn't need to be a journey. We could say right now, everybody belongs. That inclusion piece is going to take time, and it takes practice, and we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay, so long as you have that mindset and that commitment.
So openness, tolerance, that brings me to the next question, because I think we're talking about values, and not everybody has spent time doing a little bit of soul searching individually or as a corporation. What are your values, and how do you live them, and how do you express them? So what tips would you give to companies looking to articulate their values, and what's important for businesses to succeed at doing this?
So now you've come to like my personal favorite topic in the world with only one last question. That this is truly my passion area, and this is where the future, I believe, is of communication. A communicator today needs to play double duty. They need to make sure that their businesses, that their clients or their businesses, whatever it is seen as best in class, right? I have the best service, I have the best product. That's your job as a communicator. But you also now have the job to communicate meaning behind, like, post-profit. So if we look at it, if we separate those 2 points, if we are only going to focus on corporate messaging, on product, services, results, there's a finite runway. At some point, somebody's product is going to come and work faster or better, or be in nicer color, or it won't be needed, right? Or it will be replaced. At some point, you have that finite runway. But conversely, if you look at promoting purpose, all of a sudden your messages are everlasting. All of a sudden, they could change. With you as an organization, they're new. They grow with you, they're elastic, and they respond to the needs. And then that is a much stronger and lasting story for the company.
And I love that. I know that in my industry, I mean, financial services, insurance particularly, and investments, a lot of people join it because it can be very profitable. But I find that if profit is what leads your practice, you're going to be in this sector very, very, very little, or you're very replaceable. I think the bonds we've been able to build with our clients and the stories we're able to extract out of, what's really, truly important to them is so much more valuable and helpful to them, because not everybody spends time understanding what's important to them from what money can do for them. Be rich, be, normal, be middle class, be, making ends meet. And our thing is, let's try to get you a financial plan. It doesn't have to have 75 pages of incomprehensible models, because that's of zero help to you. Let's figure out where you are, how you do it. Let's make sure that all the players know what's going on. And then let's set goals and get there, right? And it takes time. You didn't get to this messy situation in 3 days. It's not going to be solved in 3 days. So it takes work on both sides, of course, but it's so much more rewarding when you live your values. And that's the
Absolutely.
message what we try to convey to clients and to competitors too, right? It's guys, there's plenty to go around. It's, are you helping your clients or are you just adding noise to their financial life? So how, well, you know what, easier will be once we post this video, we'll put your contact information and how people can get in touch with you. Is that something we can do? Yes, we can do that.
Absolutely.
That was a dumb question.
Absolutely. A good tip on that one, by the way, whether it's financial or is focusing on the why as much as the what. So whether it's financial, planning or public relations, focus on why you're doing it, not what it is that you're doing or what the product is, but the why.
Wendy, you've been giving us so many tips and really powerful information that I hope people can act on, whether it be personal or through their work life. Mm-hmm. But you mentioned something that is of special interest to us, women and COVID and the setback. Mm-hmm. What, in Wendy Style's 3 tips, what tips can you give to the workforce? It's not just to women, to the workforce, to people who are listening on how to fix the setback.
Well, if I only had the answers and 3 steps of how to fix a setback against, 50% of the population, then I'd be onto something. But, as a quick answer, I think that we need to start protecting. First of all, you can't have any advancement if women don't feel protected. I think if we look at the statistics of violence against women, since COVID started, and any time there is stress, that goes up. So we need to first protect women and make sure that they're protected and safe. So that's number 1. I think we have to look at the setbacks that this pandemic has brought forth. Depending on what you read, it's about 30 years of advancement has now been clawed back as a result of this pandemic in terms of pulling out of the workforce for women and many other reasons. So that's definitely a problem. And I think for those who have not pulled out of the workforce, I think what remains and what continues is this gap in leadership and having women in leadership roles right at the top. And that is something that there is a lot of work now that is being done about this. And we are now talking about this, but there is ways away. And I think we have to really be looking at that power gap. So
wonderful.
Those would be my high level.
Well, that's gold. So thank you so much, Wendy. We hope to continue this conversation. It's always fun and interesting, and seeing your perspective is always enriching. So we will put your contact details in when we post the video. But let's keep the conversation going, and let's stay in touch. Thank you.
Fantastic. Take care.